Yes, we're starting at 7.
Yeah, should I just go back downstairs and read?
Hang out in the kitchen,
Yeah, okay.
and then we'll bring you up.
Thank you. Sorry to bother. I don't suppose you can help me. I've got a different inquiry. I'm looking for Lily, who's running a class, like community dance class.
It's probably downstairs. There's another studio like directly under this.
Okay, thank you.
I think you'll be there.
That's not useful. At all.
So, if I go live,
It's quite hard. It's not at all. Okay, that's not going to work. I won't go live. Because I forgot, of course, Instagram is portrait. Video is landscape. So
You
I don't
don't.
be on the side.
you can't have it on the side.
Well, it's not really
Oh yeah,
good for.
it's not the best. Is there a way?
Is there
I think I've got the same issue.
ring
Can we sit?
electricity?
Trusty assistant.
Yeah.
Now is your time to shine.
Hey, you know the tripod? Yes. So, I need to make what's that? No, I can open a bloody tripod. That's not the problem. The problem is, you know the little frame for the phone? Hang on, I'll put my headphones in, hold on.
Okay, I think I can send you an invite.
So maybe it will just relay. She is an Aussie darling. I told you that.
Who's
It's my
an Aussie?
husband. You.
So I've sent you an invite and you can join my live stream.
Oh, great, okay. Then maybe I'll do mine to Facebook then, and that actually can take landscape.
Oh, really? But I can only join it on. I don't know how to do it.
Let me have a look. Let me see. Yeah, so darling, are you live?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
we're live. Shall I turn it off? I'm coming. We'll be back at 7.
Yeah, so the frame that holds the phone, I need it to be not landscape but portrait, and it hasn't got the little, it's got a screw for the portrait, but I can't screw it in.
Technology.
Yeah. Yes. 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 See? Aren't you brilliant? I knew you would have the answer. Oh, well, there you go. Aren't you fantastic? Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. See you later.
See you later. Other people must have spoken before.
Actually, my husband, clearly. He's just like, you just tilted. No, he's English. Yeah. He's lived in Australia, so. Yeah, so he feels like
He's a surrogate Aussie.
yeah, and he wants to be Aussie. He wants to move back.
You can't live in Australia without being without learning a trick or two.
Right. Okay, let's have a look. 16 requests. Accept. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so will you just do, are you going to do like a, a bit of a spiel intro when you have a chat and just let me know when you want to ask something? Or
Yeah.
what would you like?
I was going to ask you, I don't know really, play it by ear.
I think it's good for you to do like an introduction.
I was going to do an introduction.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can ask, maybe you could make notes about what I said and then ask what you want to ask.
Yeah.
And then I can make... No, I don't need to save that.
Yeah.
Are we on camera? Kind of awkward with this angle. I don't like it. I don't like it. Maybe I'll just make it all about me.
This is quite good because we have like one
Different
long,
angles.
one short.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you just tell me what you want and I'll just do whatever you like, really.
Let me go to the blue and then we'll think of some questions.
Video. How's that? That looks like that one. Okay, that's ready. No, that's cool.
You should ask what you're curious about or what you think other people will be curious about. Because one of the things, like maybe you got that photo that you put on the Instagram.
Which photo?
The one of my punch-out. Did you pull that from my website?
It would have been my assistant, not me. Is it not good?
Sorry?
Is it not good? I can tell her to take it down?
Yes, it's just the one that's advertising on Instagram is a different one.
Okay.
That more looks like he's screaming.
Let me have a chat with her. She's
so
online. Hang on.
I posted the one from the event. On Instagram. So you could ask her to just repost my one, and I sent it to you.
Mm-hmm.
With text and with no text. Because one of the problems I have is with branding.
Sorry.
One of the issues I have is with branding where like photographers or like people they're just like, oh, you're doing ballet, and they like think that anything that's like trad ballet is like, oh, you'll like this then, and you're a ballet company. I'm like, yeah, you don't really get it, do you?
Sorry, where did you send me the images for this? I just on the link.
I sent you.
Let me have a squeeze.
I sent you
the Eventbrite link. I can take it off. Get her to take it off there. That one.
The picture, yeah, but I sent.
This one, the screaming one.
But the screaming one, I sent an Instagram. I tagged you. I tagged your account on Instagram with the one the copy of that one.
Let me use that.
Shall I just message it to you?
Yeah. Can you WhatsApp it to me?
I can WhatsApp it.
Yes. Okay. Just because I don't really
for
manage
consistency.
I don't really manage the Instagram.
accounts.
Yeah, sadly, I just don't have the time.
Nobody has time to do everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was cool. I was like, oh, she put a post up, and then I was like, oh no, wait, someone's photo.
She's just taking down a different image. Yeah. She's very proactive.
Yeah, she's clearly like.
She's also based in Germany, so she's
really?
not around the corner.
Wait, how do I share this? Okay, save. And then share. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, it's cool if you have something up. It's not like a major disaster.
No, but we've got time to change it, so.
No. Cool. Who's watching this? Somebody's watching. Hello, who are you? There's someone on Twitch. All right, shall I bring the people up? Basically, I'll just introduce what I was going to talk about. And if you feel like I'm going on too long, you can stop me and ask me to like explain more, or go into more detail on something, or bring it back. I've got that list of the things that I said I was going to talk about. Go live. Are we on? I think we're on.
Should we go grab that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you want me to go find her?
Please.
That's right.
We might have to, I'll just chat to these people who are on our live feed. So we have a few minutes to like chill while we wait for everyone to come in. And who else would we want? Who else wants to join this? Come join our live stream, babe. All of you. Let's invite everyone, because you've all been a part of it. It's really cool. Actually, I've been talking to loads of people in the last year, and not everyone could be here today. So it would be cool if you can join us digitally. Hey, Becca Wills, who are you? How do you know HackBallet? Is she gone? Come up.
Join the
Come
table, in
in.
fact.
Come in. Hi everyone. Someone else joined our Twitch stream. We're here at the lovely Rainagoga Studios, and we've probably got people going to come in dribs and drabs. Come in. Hey, what's your name? Jasvinda.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
This is Savannah.
Come and sit with us.
Oh, am I the first person here?
Sorry. Please.
That's right.
You're the first one. Lucky, but I mean, this is London, so I'm just expecting like people will come in dribs and drabs. I think. It's very quiet now. Sometimes at Wayne McGregor, it's full of beans and business. And Are you a dancer too?
I've just started practicing ballet.
Cool.
I'm a designer.
Are you?
Yeah.
No, but that's really cool.
Yeah,
Like
and
sometimes
just-
there's a lot of crossover between like design of the body and design, like visual design.
Yeah. And also, I think ballet has come so much into the forefront. In
Yeah.
terms of obviously, Tate Modern is the exhibition as well.
Ah.
Russian kind of influence there.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of come into its own. I think it's really interesting. I've been going on and off to ballet class about 3 years now. I'm still very much beginner. I kind of no hopes of becoming a dancer or whatever. But
Don't already like you're already
it's quite
going.
addictive.
Oh yeah.
It's really addictive. And so it's great.
That's one of the things I want to talk about.
Okay.
Is people's the language we have around like who's a professional dancer and
Who can dance.
admitting to have ambition. Like if you say I want to become a good dancer, but why do you have to qualify it by saying, oh, but I don't want to be professional, it's okay, don't feel threatened by my ambition, right? This is it's a feminism thing, but it's also but it's also a way that dancers sort of like stratify themselves into like I am a professional or I'm not a professional, and like how you want people to read you. So where do you like to take classes?
So mainly at Central School of Ballet.
In the evening?
Yeah.
Which teacher do you like?
I think a mixture.
You go there all the time?
Yeah, I have got favourites, but sadly one of my favourites left.
They change all the time.
Yeah, they change all the time.
Who did you like? If they've left, you can say.
Yeah, no, he was really lovely. I've forgotten his name now, but he was just really good at kind of giving you that extra motivation. I think like when he kind of taps you on the shoulder and said that was done beautifully or that was so elegant. I think
It's
that's
nice to have the
kind of reassurance
encouragement.
that you need.
Do you know,
personal as
there
well.
is something about the level of instruction you have and the amount of corrections you get. When you're new and a beginner, you need more reassurance and encouragement, and you need to know you did that right, or I can see you're working on that well. If you're more advanced, you might be more up for being told that wasn't good enough, try harder. Like and it also depends on what kind of person you are. Like, not everyone wants to be pushed, but some people, if they're not pushed, they get bored. So it's like the teacher has to like adapt to you and try to like make their teaching style fit what you need. Here we go for the link. Okay. Yeah. We'll give people a few more minutes. How did you find out about dancing originally?
So originally I used to work
Come in.
on the Strand.
I'm Bri, this is Savannah.
Hi.
And
Come and join us.
Jazz. Find a space. What's your name?
It's Raheti.
Raheti, nice to meet you.
So I used to work in the Strand.
Yeah.
And my commute to the Strand, I used to go for work on the garden. And so when you're in the lift,
See all the pictures.
No, not just that. There's lots of ballerinas, and obviously all like houses nearby. And just hearing the conversation, it was just so fascinating. And I think it just triggered something in me. I just thought, as a child, my parents wasn't fortunate enough to kind of go to ballet or
Yeah,
classes.
it's quite
But
segregated, isn't it?
I just got so fascinated in their just like the kind of the way they were excited, or
Yeah.
just talking about the aches and pains.
Oh yeah.
And it was a daily commute, and I just thought, gosh, that would be so lovely
Yeah.
to go into it. And I thought, oh gosh, I was so put off with the fact that, you know, I'm getting older, you know, I have no hopes of becoming a dancer, but just kind of starting at such a late age.
Oh,
When you
it's
say-
never too late
yeah,
when
to
you
start
say
to
it's
dance at all. No,
Yeah, just
absolutely.
So many people
Yeah.
are kind of very much in the same boat in
Yeah.
terms of they're not put off the fact that, you know, they're a different shape or size, they just want to do it.
Well, I'm not obviously a professional dancer
Yeah.
like Briar rather. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
So
And
polite, aren't we?
so polite. Well, yeah, true. But I've always taken like an adult
Adult
class,
balance.
and actually, it is. You know, I have to say, as I sort of got older, and I used to take adult classes in Sydney, at the Sydney Dance Theatre, which is like a beautiful location
They
on
have
the
a
water.
gorgeous
It's
space.
so beautiful. It's in this.
The space you're in really does make a difference.
It really does. So you'd be in this sort of beautiful old wharf, and they would open up the doors in summer, and you could walk out to like cool down on the water. But you know, that was. Oh gosh, that was like 15 years ago. So I sort of do it here. I go to Dance Works, where I take a ballet class, and every so often I take a
Who's
few.
you take?
What's that?
Whose class do you take?
I can't remember her name now.
What time is it?
I just do the beginners class on
Beginners.
Wednesdays.
In the daytime or evening?
Evening, 6 o'clock. Hope to see you there. No. But actually, it's, you know, it's quite, I have found, you know, it's, as long as it's, and you'll hate this, I know, but as long as I don't look in the mirror too much, I just actually enjoy the experience of dancing.
But again, like that's
Yeah.
about your somatic experience versus trying to perform
Yeah.
for someone else. Like,
But I love the performance of it,
but
actually.
performing
Yeah.
because you feel great,
Yeah.
not because you're trying to like look a certain way.
No, exactly. So although you want your technique to be as good as possible, it's just such a nice experience to actually, you know, to do the port de bras and to do the pliés and then to do the centre work
Posture
and
as well. Like,
Yeah.
so posture changing off
Yeah.
the first class. I immediately realised that I'm actually sitting on my hips, like me to
Yeah.
be lifting my weight up. And so it's so fascinating from like an anatomy point of view. What you take away, you don't realise.
definitely. And when you take some time off from class and you go back and then you start doing your releves and then you realise at the end of the class, after you've done your pretty allegro and your grand allegro, and then you leave and then you realise the next day you can't actually walk. Your calves are locked.
That's the workout part of it.
And that's when, you
the
do
DOM,
realise,
delayed onset
you know.
muscle soreness. You're like,
Yeah.
I actually worked hard. Like,
Yeah, I think it's I still think it's one of the hardest workouts. Although I think I've taken a class with one of my friends who I think it was Seen on Screen, where they do like a hip hop class, and they video it, which is a challenge for me because I don't like video. But and they sort of turn the music up really loud, they turn the lights down, and you sort of learn these sections, and you end up being able to perform quite a sophisticated, full-on piece to like a Beyonce track or whatever. And after that, I have to say, the next day I couldn't believe how much pain I was. But it was a different type of pain to my ballet class. It was completely different.
Different muscles.
Deeper in the thighs, because you've got to get like right down and in your back
squat muscles.
over rather than, you know, holding it up. It's really
And
interesting.
it's a lot of like short twitch muscle movement.
Yeah, and really fast. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's fun though. You should try it.
Maybe that's another thing, like
Yeah.
the use of video these days, like, and self-perception, like how that affects people's, so your sense of progress, but also just the ability to just enjoy it without worrying about what you look like. What's your ballet story? Do you go to dance classes or choreographer?
Yes and no. I don't go to them to do any dance. So I like to draw.
Oh, dance art is so very popular at the moment. Wow.
And I make them into prints.
Wow.
Do you? Well, we're going to have a look at some of your drawings if you have any there.
I haven't got any with me, no.
Okay.
Do you publish them or you just keep them for yourself? Like, do you
I'm
fabrics or
fine
something?
art MA student at Brighton.
Really?
My final year show's coming up.
Cool.
So it's in the first week of July.
Okay.
So my work will be up.
Okay.
Wow. Are you on Instagram? Do you want us to do a shout out for you?
I have to.
Maybe
I
later.
have to okay it with
Okay.
someone else, but
Send
I wouldn't say no.
Send us a message afterwards, and we can tag your work and say shout out to you.
Yeah.
Hiya.
Hello. Hi.
I'm Brian. This is Savannah.
Hi.
You're here for the HackBallet Insights.
Yes.
Please join
Fantastic.
us. I think we're off to a slow start. There's a couple of people I was expecting, so I'm just gonna let people have a moment to like find their way up from downstairs in case. But we're just talking about our dance stories, like what got you into dancing, what do you know about contemporary ballet? Never danced?
The dance on my mum.
Are
The
you?
dance mum is very important.
Dance
A
mums.
role you cannot underestimate in the dance world.
You're the motivators and the
enabler.
project managers.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you? You like dancing? Whereabouts do you dance?
It's called Amplified Arts Academy.
Where's that?
Bermondsey.
In Bermondsey.
Saturday.
What styles do you do?
Hip hop, ballet, just hip hop, ballet, don't really do that.
Wow. That's a really interesting combination, especially with some of the movies that have been out, like with combining the two. Do you do shows?
Yeah, there's an upcoming summer show.
When's your show?
11th of July.
11th of July.
Do a big showcase.
Where's it going to be?
It's going to be at the...
In the school?
No, it's the Amplified Arts Academy. It's an academy that does drama, singing, dance.
Okay.
But most of
They have a space. You can
they
like
have
set up
it's
as
like
a
it's like a warehouse
theatre.
space.
Ah.
Warehouse space. in
Amplified.
Bermondsey. Yeah, Amplified Arts Academy.
Cool.
And they're attached to a massive a mega church.
Oh,
But
really?
it's not a faith, even though it's a...
Yeah.
They come under that. It's not
Yeah.
it's for anybody who can go. But it's to give young people an opportunity who wouldn't get an opportunity
Yeah.
to do it by, because most of the dancers are professional dancers and have worked with a lot of...
Fantastic.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's really
We've
good.
got professional
yeah, so they've worked
dancers.
with a lot of fame, like, to be honest, they've done choreography for massive shows.
Yeah.
But they teach on Saturdays
At this school.
at this school.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, they recognise that the ballet is really important for the hip hop.
For your strength.
So,
And flexibility, like loads of hip hop now, it's all about flexibility and there's loads of like splits and like back bends and flips and stuff. And you need to be able to control that, like, especially if you're hypermobile. When did you start dancing?
I started dancing in like year 4, like at primary school.
So a few years.
Yeah, and then just kind
Carried on. Do you just dance on Saturdays or you have other trainings or?
of just
Can you do think you're doing at school? Can you do dance in your school?
I can't do it at school, but I can do it for my GCSEs.
Yeah.
So I'll be doing GCSEs.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Because GCSE actually there is the big focus on contemporary, and you have to make your own choreography. Do you like doing that?
Yeah.
Choreographing your own dances.
Yeah.
They will talk a lot about themes and like where the impetus for what your dance inspiration comes from. Yeah, we can talk about that a bit as well. Hi, Miss just joined us on the live Instagram. Yeah, maybe I'll give them 5 more minutes and then we'll start my little talk. I guess I wanted to like recap like where I've come from this year. Has anyone been to this When We Go Studios before? No.
It's amazing, isn't it?
no, she's Googled, she knew this one.
Yeah, you know this place. They've only had it a few years. It's been here since the Olympics. So they set it up as part of the legacy. And Wayne McGregor is a choreographer. You must have heard of him before. Have you heard of Wayne McGregor? Yeah. He works for the Royal Ballet. But he started off, pretty sure he went to Laban. So he went to university and did contemporary dance. And then he had his own company for a few years. And he was quite successful making his own style, choreography. So then after that, he got hired by big ballet companies and he got residency at the Royal Ballet. So he's done loads of different kinds of shows, and he's choreographed for movies and dance companies and site-specific performances, and he did one of the pieces for like the Olympic, when they did the launch of the Olympics. Yeah, I can't remember where it was. I know that they had a big performance in Trafalgar Square, and it might have been part of the opening ceremony as well, or one of the ceremonies, one way or the other. And then you got this space, and one of the ideas that the team have, because it's not just him anymore, it's like he's got his own company, they thought that dancers is one of the same thing, like you're saying, with like professional dancers having opportunities to work with people when they wouldn't have otherwise had that opportunity, because dance is very like resource intensive, and you need a lot of training and like sort of like you need the space, and you need access to theatres, and you need like a lot of rehearsal time, and you need time to kind of research new ideas if you're coming up with your own new stuff. There's not that many places in London where you can get affordable rehearsal space if you're independent. So you already have to be successful and have a company behind you and have fundraising
Be funded.
stuff. Yeah, before you're to make new work. So this program here is like a free access program for anyone to sign up. If you have an idea to make new choreography, you can apply to them and they will give you the rehearsal space, and it's funded by the same backers from the team that backs Wayne McGregor's company. So it's really kind of bridging a gap between independent artists and professional, like people who are already working.
So how did you get involved with this?
So actually, one of my friends who's also a choreographer knew about the space and told me about it. And then I applied, and then I was given a place in the free space program. So I actually joined, Mose says nice to see you. Hey, nice to see you too. Yeah, it's been a while, we come to class. I teach on Fridays at Space Hoxton, which is the former campus of Hackney Community College, and Hackney Community College merged with like 5 different colleges in East London, and their performing arts team have moved out to Redbridge, I think. So they have dance studios at that campus, which is right near Hoxton Tube Station, the overground, but they don't have any taught courses now anymore for dance and performing arts. But I used to teach on that program. And so I started my own class in the evening. So I have like a contemporary ballet class on Fridays, and then choreography group that makes new work. And so I was just working independently. Like I've been in London since 2005, and I've just been like I worked at the RAD, and I worked at Step Into Dance, which is, they have an outreach program where they send teachers out to high schools. And then I worked at the Royal Opera. Technical difficulties. Have you joined the live stream?
So we're live streaming on the Wonderful World of Dance. There's loads of people waving.
Hi.
Yeah, so say hi.
Hi, Rory.
Everyone just check in the tags for Brian Adams. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just readjusting the camera. I just got a little note saying that my attempt to get off camera was working really well.
Was working well until...
So I'm just going to see if I can squeeze in a speech.
I guess this is one of those things where, like, if you don't come from like the standard background of like you had a dance mom family and you went to the Royal Ballet when you were young and then you got a job in a famous dance company, then it can be really hard to think of yourself as like, I am a dancer and I'm allowed to have that identity. And so I think there's a huge movement these days now with like that you can define your own path and you don't need other people to give you approval to tell you you can do this or you can't do that. you can actually decide for yourself what you want to do, and then you can work on it yourself, and sort of like, and you can make things within your own, like the limit of your resources. But because of like modern technology, we actually have a lot more resources that we didn't used to have. So one of the philosophies about of HackBallet is the idea of like, in IT technology, there's like this idea of hacks or a hacker, and they're the people who are like, they're like a little bit outside of the mainstream, and they find a way to do things that's a bit DIY, and it's using like whatever they have, like use what you have and do what you can. So you don't have to like already have reached the perfect like 100% result. You can sort of start with what you've got and then build from there. So I really like to encourage people to be positive about where they are right now, and not think like, oh, that you have to be perfect before you can do anything, which maybe like this whole idea of the modern technology, like as well, the downside of it is this sense of perfectionism that you're always able to access. Like if you watch it on Instagram, all you see is like the famous dancers from like the Carnival or American Ballet Theatre or Bolshoi or whatever, Royal Ballet, and they're like the best in the world, and they've got thousands of followers, and they're posting up, you know, the most flexible and the most turns and the most jumps and the coolest tricks. And you don't know that like there's so many millions of people out there who are actually more like you, but all you're seeing is this like curated feed of like the best of the best. Then you can then start thinking like, oh, I'm not that good, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. So it's really important to like try to use technology for the good side it can give you, but then not get drawn into the kind of the negative side where you can start comparing yourself to others, start thinking I'm not good enough. Like it's really good to use your positive energy to switch that around and say, what do I want to say? Who do I want to connect with? Who can I give gratitude and appreciation to, so that then you actually know that you have something to offer back to them. It's the same with like consumer movement. Like when you're like buying products, you choose like what companies you want to support by what you pay for, and like who you go and, you know, see their shows or absorb use their products, like what brands you want to use. So then you do have this power to like promote things based on like what you're subscribing to in terms of your values. And I think that's one of the hardest things of like as you reach more maturity, that when you're young you're trying to like fit in and you want to be accepted and you want to be good, so you're looking for people who can teach you and mentor you and things to look up to, and I want to be like that. And then as you get older you realize, like, has anyone heard the song, I think it's a Calvin Harris song, like this is the industry, this is the industry, I am in the industry, you are in the industry, we are in the industry, this is the industry. It's like, who are the people out there who are making up this industry that you want to get into? Actually, it's you, and you have more power than you realize. But that can come with a sense of like the responsibility, like, oh my God, like nobody actually knows better than I do. Like I know something, and I have a chance of what I share and what I tell others and what I support in other people. Yeah, so I guess that's like part of the philosophy behind HackBallet was to try and think, okay, I've encountered loads of problems in my career where I felt like people judged me for what I look like, or where I come from, or what training I had, or what, you know, what clothes I'm wearing, how I do my hair, all that stupid stuff, like appearance, where it's kind of like just superficial and it's not really about who you are as a person, but it sort of judges you on your class and your background and what group you belong to. And do you deserve to be in our group because did you come from the right background and the right pedigree? And I'm a foreigner, I come from Australia, and getting into the art industry anywhere, it seems like it's reserved for this kind of like upper class, like the traditional attitude is like it's only for like the top or best of the best. And you can always think like, oh, I'm not good enough, and you think about, oh, why I don't come from the right background or whatever. So I guess I was really inspired by people that start their own business, and people who start blogging or start making films, or artists who make, you know, a guitarist in their bedroom who has a YouTube channel, like kids that video themselves and put that up on Instagram, and like they didn't need some company or director telling them, yes, you're good enough, you're allowed to do it. They just went out and did it. So one of the things I like to do is like go out in public places and like make dance videos. I bet you do too, and this is really common. This is why it's really inspiring, because ballet dancers don't normally do that. Ballet dancers are very much like perfectionists, right? Oh, I need to have my ballet studio. It needs to be the perfect temperature. I need to have my shoes exactly right. I need to be like dressed immaculately, and nothing can possibly go wrong. So it's really unusual to see a ballet dancer like, you know, slumming it, like out. It does happen, but like the perception is like, oh, they're so perfect, and they would never like chill out or, you know, go camping or get dirty or go for a hike, or I mean, but I've done performances like in warehouses at nightclubs or out, you know, in the street, and I think there's a movement now with other female choreographers who are promoting that idea of like, we just want to make stuff and we don't want to have to like bend down to some like authority who's usually a man, like who, you know, runs everything. Like we just want to make our own thing happen. And sometimes like if all you have is a phone, like use your phone and make something and film yourself. And you have to kind of just get over this need to be perfect all the time, which I struggle with, because like I've had all these years of training of like, you can't do anything unless it's perfect. Like don't go to an audition unless you're in perfect shape, and you have to like never, you know, you have to lose weight and you have to look great and you have to look perfect, and your technique has to be immaculate and spotless and no flaws ever. But then part of what you also get taught in stagecraft, which you probably get taught in theatre school as well, what happens if you make a mistake? Do you go, oh my God, I made a mistake, I'm so sorry everyone, like I just made a mistake, oh my God, like please forgive me. Do you do that on stage? No. You go, whatever, didn't happen, whatever, it doesn't matter, like just smile, look over here, don't look at this thing I just did over here, look over here. Like it's all about misdirection. So that's this thing of like what magicians do, where they tell a story and they teach you what to connect and what to focus on, and you don't see the flaws and you don't see like what's going on behind the scenes and the magician behind the curtain. So I found that quite inspiring, like the ability to like use your energy and your passion and your excitement and enthusiasm to direct people to what you want them to see. And so then we were actually talking about this earlier about like the branding you have. So one of the things that when I was starting out as a dancer, I was kind of thinking like, oh, I always had to get photos for my portfolio, and I had to get the photos that were like of the traditional classical ballet poses. So like all the poses, like if you look on everybody's Instagram, all the dancers, they all have an arabesque pose and a second pose and a pose in a tutu, and like they're all the same, and they're all trying to like get who's got the highest leg or who's got the most turned out foot. And of course that's beautiful. But then I started doing more dance modeling for photographers, and photographers, they tend to be more interested in the how much your expression communicates, the light on your skin, the kind of general composition of the photo, not just your pose, but like what's in the background and your setting and stuff. Maybe it's the same with art. Like you don't necessarily need the pose to be like the perfect, anatomically correct, like mathematically perfect pose. You can make other poses that are actually really interesting. So I did loads of photo shoots where I was just improvising and just doing whatever, and the photographer just was watching me and like took, you know, a few moments here and there, and I didn't even know what they were going to look like at the end. And then we looked back at them and it's like, oh wow, those are really interesting. Like it wasn't the perfect ballet picture, but it was actually still really interesting. And then I had the idea of like, oh well, could you make a dance using those pictures and then turn that into then the choreography? So then I made a piece with a friend of mine where we made a duet where we took all these photos and then we made the choreography based on the photos. So it wasn't like the normal steps that you learn in ballet class, which is like the you know, pliés and tendus and arabesque and grand battement and grand jeté and like the repertoire and the language. We were making our own language, and that's kind of something that's really interesting these days. That like even, and you'll hear this in like apocryphal stories about famous choreographers, there's a lot of moments, even you find crossover in movies and books and in music and TV and as well, when something was a mistake. Like the director was like, oh yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen like that. It was a mistake. Oh, the piece of film ran out, or a dog ran behind the set like at that moment and like rustled the trees, or the actor like had a hissy fit and had a tantrum and stormed off, and so we couldn't finish the scene. And then the audience is like, wow, that's so exciting, that moment, like there was a ghost there, or oh, you can see in his eyes his rage at the character, and like people interpret it their own way. And sometimes when you have these cult films or TV shows or dramas where people, like, they remember those moments and they think that you did it on purpose, but actually for you it was like, no, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. So there is an element of like having control and like wanting to be the author and wanting to express, like make things the way you imagine them, but then also having a sort of a sense of serendipity that like moments could just happen to you and you might not have control, and it might be influenced by either the environment or the other people involved or some random thing that's out of your control. But it could also be interesting, and it could mean something to the audience. It could mean something to communicate to them. So that was one of the things that I noticed about my own choreography is like when I started to like ask the dancers to have more input. And I'm saying, okay, well, I'm the choreographer, but that doesn't mean I have to make each and every movement and tell you exactly what to do, like with your fingertip or with your eye or with your, pose or your expression. When I could get people to sort of like have more authority themselves to improvise and to give ideas, and we can have a discussion, and it's more of a collaboration. So that's a very contemporary dance idea. In classical ballet, like traditional classical ballet, the director is the boss and the director tells you what to do. And it depends on the structure of the company and how you are working, whether you want to work that way. So some choreographers do, like prefer, I am the dot boss and I tell you what to do, and I make all the movement, and I watch you and I tell you what to do and I correct you and make it perfect. But then other people are more like collaborative, and they will ask you, okay, can you make up 5 counts of something that's very like jagged and angry, and then you go away and make that up and then come back and show me, okay, what did you do? Oh, cool. And then so like let's like stretch it out here, or add something there, or can you do it with a flip at the end, or can you and you work together and like join your pieces together, and then we'll make a duet out of it. And so there is this way of like connecting your idea with my idea, and then having that evolve over time. So it's a sort of like choice you have to make as you're working with how much time you have, because that can take longer. But you can also, it can also mean that there's more people in the room who can offer ideas, and then you can actually get to a more interesting original result than you would have got with just one person's ideas. So yeah.
I was just going to ask, do you want to take us back to when you, I guess, decided to become a choreographer?
I was really young.
Were you?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a choreographer.
Yeah, because you were talking before about that, almost giving yourself the permission to create, and going out onto the street and creating your works and turning these beautiful photos into pieces of work. At what point did you feel that actually you could create and you didn't have to wait for someone else's permission to call yourself the choreographer?
It's a bit of a feedback loop. So I went to a school where they were very encouraging. My school was a community arts school, and they were not trying to train you necessarily to be a dancer. They were trying to give everyone a chance to dance, and we did actually get opportunities to choreograph from a young age. But actually when I was young, I thought, I want to be a dancer. And maybe in my perception of the career path of choreographers, this is probably something that I have to challenge even more in my own like coaching and personal development. Like my mental picture of what it is to be a good choreographer is that you go to ballet school and then you get a job and you work for 10 years in a company and then you get a job as a choreographer. And as we all know, we live in an evolving, flexible gig economy where people don't have jobs anymore. You find, and this is something that I've noticed with my peer group, that even dancers who are working in a full-time company, they still don't have a permanent contract with like all the permanent employee conditions. They actually have a self-employed contract where they're just employed for like a day over, you know, like this many days over this period of time, or this many hours, or there's a performance and you've got like, oh, we've got rehearsals on this day, this day, this day, and then you do the performance at the end, and then there's no ongoing commitment from either side. And that's kind of a response to the economy in general, the way that funding works and the way that dancers get paid is you're usually relying on box office sales or private donations, and there's some public funding. So like most companies have this kind of hybrid system of funding where they get a part from the government and a part from private donors, and then some from sales. So everyone's sort of like uncertain and unsure where the money's coming from, and people they can't commit to pay you if there's no like income stream coming in. So I guess when I was younger, I always thought that like I would have a job one day, and that's just never happened. Like I've always been self-employed, and it wasn't really like intentional. It just was that way. Like that's just how the world was. If you went for an audition, it was like, oh, there's this opportunity to create something. It's not a full-time job, and you just kind of have to like slot things in. So I guess I think that I started auditioning after I finished ballet school. I mean, I made work when I was in ballet school, and I made work when I was a kid, when I was at my community school. We always had an end of year show, a summer show, and sometimes the teachers were like, okay, you guys create the choreography, and they would just, you know, let us work it out as a group. Sometimes I was given like, oh, can you make a solo, you know, or there's this, or can you do that solo from that classical piece, and I would put that in. And then because I enjoyed it and I wanted to do more, like the teachers would give me more opportunities, like, can you make something for that group of younger students? So like sometimes you get those opportunities sort of as an assistant, like the director will give you a group and say, can you make this section, you know, like a 1 minute section or 2 minute section for those, you know, there's another group of younger kids that need something, and then you get a chance to like try out some ideas with them, and without having to have responsibility for the whole show. But then I went to ballet school and I was like, okay, I'm going to audition for companies, and then I didn't get a job in a company, so I was like, well, I'm not just going to sit around and not do anything. Like, me and my friend can get together and go to a dance studio and make a video. And I did that a couple of times, and then I applied for some platforms. You get knocked back a lot though, so I think because I didn't have much experience. And you also have to tailor, if you're applying for stuff and trying to fit into somebody else's platform, then you have to sort of like fit your idea to the platform theme, and you do have to go through a curator, and the curator might not like your application. But there's this like, it's a weird thing when you're talking about dance versus doing dance. They're quite different skills. And when you're doing training, like GCSE, higher level academic training, they will teach you much more like the language around dance, like how to give criticism and how to describe your process and how to talk about where you get your ideas from, and then what you're doing in the studio and what you're doing creatively. And that's where the neuroscience of creativity comes in. There's a lot of research on that, like where people get ideas and how in your brain one idea connects to another. So that stuff is really important as well, like to be able to talk about your work, but then what you actually do and you get in the studio and come up with things might not be the same as what you talked about. But often it's fine, like the thing you do is okay, you just need to have the right language of how to describe it. So it might not be like, look like the traditional model of like, I am the director and I tell you how to dance, but it's okay to talk about collaborative process and that kind of thing.
What is your choreographic process? Do you have a process that you sort of normally go through when you get into the studio?
Yeah, I've had quite a lot of different, I think generally I'll have either a movement idea or a theme, like I work with themes about emotion and stories a lot, and I'll I'll sometimes make a movement phrase and teach it to the dancer and then have them sort of like expand on it. Or I'll have two dancers in front of me and I'll be like, okay, move, you know, with pas de deux, I'll say, okay, move her here and balance her there and like push him down there and like, and I'm often very physical and I get into the space with them. So like, I'll come up to you and be like, okay, do this and do this and do this, or like, how might this work? So there is this thing about having a physical language, like not just telling people what to do, but showing them or feeling it out with them, like intuitively. But yeah, like one of the things that happened this year, so where I've been working here at McGregor, I created 2 full-length shows. So previously I've made lots of short pieces that I've been part of bigger like showcases or platforms. And what I did this year was create 2 full-length shows, which I like joined together previous ideas that I'd done in other platforms and put them all into one show, and then expanded it to make it into like a full, like 1 hour. Yeah.
That's long, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's 2 of them.
2 of them.
Yeah.
Did it take a long time? That sounds.
It doesn't. It takes a long time if you had to do it all in one go.
Yeah.
But because I've made them piece by piece, and got feedback, and then made things again, and got feedback, and made it again, like it's sort of I imagine you do speed up as you go. But then it is a lot of pressure. Like some people, they get a commission to make a full-length ballet, and like you just have to, you've got 4 weeks, and you've got to have something ready to go on stage at the end. And I almost feel like, from a creative point of view, it's easier if you have more time to just do a bit and then show that and then think about it and like let it process in your head and then later come back to it. Yeah, so...
And how many dancers are in your pieces? How many have you choreographed?
This year, the show we took to Edinburgh, we had a rotating cast of like, some nights there was 5 and it was up to 8 people, but there were people that slotted in and out, because that's the thing with availability, like not everyone's going to be available. You know how it is, like trying to organise a party in London, like not everyone's available at the same time. People come late and people can't, like today loads of people said they were going to come and we're like, no, but you guys are the ones, the dedicated ones. So you would all be like, number 1, yeah, you'd all
First
have a role, first pass. The other ones were like, yeah, well, you're not committed, eh? But yeah, you have to be flexible. It's one of those things of like, oh yeah,
that's alright. We like it live.
It's the soundtrack to our life.
I was going to ask that, you mentioned before, obviously you work with themes. What sort of themes did you cover in these 2 full-length pieces?
Yeah, so going on this idea from, this is like modern blogging. A lot of the time, they tell you to write from your own experience. So I did 2 shows. One of them is called Elicitations, which is a triple bill, and the other one is called The Full Throttle, which is a burlesque cabaret theatre show. It's all one piece. And for Elicitations, the 3 pieces went in chronological order. The first piece was called To the Edge, and that piece was about the idea of being in love and feeling supported and beautiful and warm and gentle and cared for, and combine that with the idea of being at home and being safe and being protected, like in a community. And then the sense of wanting adventure and wanting to escape and leave and travel the world and see what's out there. And so sort of like following a dream. So I had this piece of music, which you might know. It's by Radiohead, the team from Radiohead. So like Johnny Greenwood and Tom York. They did a piece called Arpechi Weird Fishes, and it was performed by the Palestinian Symphony Orchestra, but they also released it on one of their albums as a kind of guitar-based piece. But I loved that piece of music, and it had really beautiful rhythms and layers when it was done on an orchestra, because very often you have like pop music and it can be done by an orchestra and it suddenly takes on this whole really different world. So it had really like beautiful like arpeggios of flutes and sound, wind instruments that kind of da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and all these different rhythms. And as soon as I heard that piece, I think I first heard it in like the year 2002 or 3, whenever it came out, like this while ago, maybe 4, I can't remember. But it was like when I first moved to Europe, I heard this piece, I'm like, I would love to make a ballet to that piece. It was so lovely. And then in 2013, there was the Counterpoint platform, which was directed by Julia Gleich and her team from Norte Mar. She's an American choreographer, and she was a lecturer at Laban at the time. But there's a company she works for. I have a feeling, I can't remember, I might get this wrong. No, it's in somewhere near New York. She runs a ballet company, and she's like the resident choreographer. And so she was like producing platforms for female choreographers, because there's still like #MeToo, women's equality, women's empowerment. There is still a huge discrepancy in directors and leadership coming from women, as opposed to most of the time it's like men who've got the top jobs of like director, leadership, the choreographers and the directors of theatres. Like the majority of them and the majority of people who get big commissions are still male, and there's not that many opportunities for women, which now there's a lot more movement in the press and in the bigger companies to promote and support female choreographers. So Julia Gleich's platform's been really important for that, like to give people like me that sense of permission. So it's funny how you were saying like about what made me feel like it was okay to call myself a choreographer. Yeah. Really, that platform made a big difference to me, that there was like an opportunity where it was specifically for women working in a ballet style and using point shoes. And there's this thing with using point shoes where you suddenly get seen and people kind of project onto like, oh, you're trying to be a ballet dancer, you're trying to do ballet, and people have this perception of what ballet is and who's allowed to be a ballet dancer, which is changing a bit, but it still has all of these stereotypes attached to it. So as soon as you say, I'm going to use point shoes, people have this perception about what you're trying to do. So that was really important for me to be able to like do something experimental where it didn't have to be like classical, look perfect, wearing a tutu, traditional music, whatever. I could do something contemporary, but still wearing point shoes, but it was specific for people who are independent, like not attached to a major company, and women, and working in a classical style. Come in, Katerina, come and sit here. No, shush, we're just having a nice little chat.
Well, maybe it's a good time just to ask, see if you want to
Does anyone have any questions?
Like any questions I want to ask at this point?
People on our stream, do you guys want to ask any questions? Just like pop them up. I know like somebody just made some comments earlier. Movement Inspires Thought says, be the best you know you are, and others will love you for the individuality you bring, not the copy of someone else. So yeah, be yourself, because everyone else is taken, right? That's the best. And what else? Anyone else have any comments? Isadora Duncan, do you guys know who Isadora Duncan is? I mean, like, those are the people that inspire you, isn't it? Like, Isadora, Martha Graham, Pina Bausch, like people who are just like females who had that vision of like, I'm just gonna do my thing, and I think dance should be like this. Isadora Duncan especially was really like, why are we worrying about like corsets and point shoes and pretending we're at the royal court? Can't we just like be free and like waft around? And so she was really like about not the body, like the knowledge from the feminine body, and sort of like celebrating that and showcasing it. But yeah, I guess those are the people that, like, when I was training and learning about choreographers, those are the people that really inspired me. And then I was also thinking like, well, there's a bunch of like dudes that make choreography that I like, and like I could do that. Like Wayne McGregor's one of the people that I looked up to, and Russell Malafant, and Will Forsyth, who was from Frankfurt Ballet, and then people like Sasha Volz, who's from Germany, who makes very like dramatic work. Who's that one from? I'll remember it later. They're the people that I used to watch their ballets and be like, oh, I'd like to make something like that.
So what are you working on at the moment?
Well, we've just finished the Elicitations tour. I haven't even mentioned my back surgery. So like I had surgery last year, which was like a big life-changing event. And this is one of those things that happens with dancers, is that you work with your body, and when your body is under threat, it just throws everything into disarray. So I made that, my program, Elicitations, was based on work that I'd already completed, like from previous years. I made it between 2013 and 2017. And then in 2018 I had this surgery, because I basically was almost paralysed. I had a back injury and I was almost paralysed, and they had to like remove part of my spine and like...
You've got to love how a dancer says that. Well, I was almost paralysed, there's nothing to worry about, you know, everyone gets an injury,
just get on with it.
I've carried on, I'm still creating. But that's quite significant, isn't it?
But on the other hand, I was also arguing with the doctors that like, I need to keep creating, otherwise what's the point of my life? Like, why am I carrying on for? It almost gives you a reason to keep going, like that kind of thing. Like I was at risk of like losing the sensations on my legs, and then like I was kind of panicking of like, oh my god, what does that mean? Like, what if I have to be in a wheelchair? Like, what if I can't walk? Like, what if I can't dance again? But I've worked a lot in the past with disability and teaching people who have different abilities. And that training where I was taught how to work with people with disabilities really helped me then when I was facing that, oh, I might not be able to use my left leg. Well, if I can't use my left leg, well, maybe I have to do more on my right leg. And then we have this thing with invisible injuries, like invisible disability. If I pose a certain way, you might not be able to tell that I was injured. Like, you can't see my nerve. You can't see which muscle is not activating and contracting because the nerve can't feel it. So then you kind of have to think about like this whole issue, like who can be a dancer? If I have a disability, does that mean I can't be a dancer? There's plenty of dancers out there with disabilities.
Absolutely.
There's whole companies of dancers with disabilities.
Absolutely.
One of my colleagues from when I was training was Mark Brew, who had a really severe spinal cord injury and is paralysed, and barely, he can use his arms, but he was at risk of like maybe would have been paralysed below the neck. And he can still get up there and perform and choreograph and travel and teach around the world. Like, you wouldn't wish it on someone, but once you have it and you try your hardest to make the best of it, then there is a possibility of what you can do. And it is one of those things that's been really like one of the issues that I've got going around in my head a lot of like, can I still be okay even if I've had this horrible thing happen? And like, what can I do? How can I positively approach that? So I think it was actually like more like important for my mental health to like keep going and to be like, no, but I'm still me. I'm still the person that I am, and I still have the history that I have. And I guess the history you have and the experiences you go through make you who you are. So even if I come from that background where I did experience challenges and I did have roadblocks or difficulties, or I had to overcome things about myself that made it harder for me, that sort of informs my process, which is coming back to this theme of like authentic blogging. Like, you can only talk really authentically about your own experience, and your experience can help others. So when I've put stuff online, like where I've made a video and posted it and I've said like, I'm suffering from this spinal cord injury and like I'm trying to recover and I'm trying to get my strength back, then other people that saw that tag and was like, they followed me and were like, hey, I find you really inspiring, thank you so much for that post, like what's your recovery like? They asked me questions about what I'm going through, and then ask advice about what they're going through. And I see, there's other people who go through the same thing, and the fact that I said something made them able to then connect with me and talk about what's happening with them, and we can share that experience and learn from each other. So yeah, it's been a bit full on, but
yeah, that's quite the journey.
Yeah.
So how's that influenced what you're working on at the moment, or has it, in terms of that authentic story that you're telling?
I guess I've then had to, instead of thinking about making pieces, maybe like working at a higher level of like creating stuff for the theatre, I really have had to like reflect back on myself. So I've been working on just creating these short little snippets of dance in ordinary places. So one of my contacts is a filmmaker, you know, Tom Seaman, and he works at the Opera House. And we've had a collaboration all of this year to make small little segments of like footage and combine. And I've been trying to reach out to composers as well. So one of the things that really
here's a shout out
for composers. If you know anyone that makes music. Or if you know anyone that is interested.
What type of music are you looking for?
The stuff that I like tends to be electronic, but modern classical or basically like I'm kind of open-minded. As long as it doesn't, as long as it's not lyrics that are really like derogatory.
Something
like
melodic, something that's got a rhythm to it.
No, I'm into soundscapes and like very experimental music. I don't like people that promote like politics that I don't agree with.
Sure. Absolutely.
So if they're like, I've got a lot of people connected with me, like queer LGBT community, like I'm a feminist. I'm not going to listen to anything that's like putting women down or telling you how to be. So like it's more about if like the style of music is less important. I'm quite open-minded and often people will send me stuff that's totally not the normal thing that I would listen to, and I'm like, I can see how to work that. But I have found that collaboration really difficult. So this is one of those challenges when you are working with a group. Let's say you're trying to choreograph with there's like 4 people in the group and everybody wants to have their say. Like it's debatable how you manage that. So I read a lot of like management theory about like how because I studied management at university.
Really interesting.
Yeah, and I kind of, it's like I don't really know how to apply it, but I sort of like think about it, like, what am I doing here? That's like, am I enabling my team or am I just like being a dictator?
Who's in charge?
Who's in charge? And, but sometimes people
whose vision is this?
But it needs to be my vision.
Yeah.
Like people need you to be a leader. Yeah. So that's really, like, it really makes me think about women in leadership. Like if you step up in front of people and say what you think and tell people what to do, people judge you, and you also feel like way out there and exposed and vulnerable. And this is one of the things I've been studying in terms of like neuropsychology and evolutionary biology. Like in the animal kingdom, the leaders are the ones with the most stress. Like the people we put our authority into, we invest them in, we want you to be the leader. Can you go in front and lead the way for us? That person at the top of the pyramid has the most stress because they have to take on the needs of everyone else that's behind them. So when you're stepping back and being like, oh no, not me, and like letting somebody else do it for you, actually, you're putting stress on that person, like to make them fight your battles for you. So sometimes you have to step up and accept like, right, I'm going to be ready for this challenge. I'm going to face this conflict. I might have to have an argument with someone. I might have to tell someone what I think, and I might have to hear what they say back to me, and it might not be comfortable. Like it puts you in that sense of vulnerability to stand up and speak your mind. But you can do that in a way that's positive and doesn't have to be like an argument or like a negative emotions. You can do it in a way that's like, okay, I'm going to say what I think and I'm willing and open to hear what you think back. So it is a discussion. So in terms of like being the authority and it being the vision, I'm sort of like open to other people's vision. But very often you have to make a decision based on practicality. And so if I'm managing the project and like I'm funding it and I'm producing it myself, then I sort of have to sacrifice some things that I would like to have. If I had more funding and sponsorship and people supporting me, then I would be able to, invest more in the people that I'm working with and like let them have more authority and like space to do things. So I think it's a kind of awkward balance, like when you're working with people, but you're ultimately the one who's got the financial responsibility.
Well, you also have the title of artistic director of HackBallet.
But I've given that to myself. Like I could give myself a collaborative title. I could give somebody else the title of like co-artistic director. Yeah. Or we could start something else together and we could call it a different thing, like that we made up. Like I don't always have to be Brian from HackBallet. Like I could be a different version of me depending on what I'm doing. So yeah, like you put on a different costume.
Yeah, you've got many a hat to wear. Mm-hmm. It must be quite like a varied life that you lead. You're sort of independent dance life in London.
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
We have to add another one. Can we do another live video? I don't know, how do you do an extra one? Can we go live again? Let's go live again. Yeah, like that's basically the idea of like, is your job your identity? So like do you only have one identity or can you have multiple? I'm going to add you here again. Because I feel like these days, you basically, you have your identity that's yourself, and even your own identity that is you can morph and change. Like maybe Katerina has that experience, like being a dancer, being a psychotherapist, being a yogi, like travel the world. Each of those things you were doing at that time, you occupied a certain identity, but then it's okay to adapt and change and be flexible. And maybe sometimes the times when you get challenged and you feel like something threatens your identity is actually when you step up and go, no, like I really believe in this. So one of the things I really believe in is environmentalism, and I'm very wary and critical of things that are too wasteful, and like the ostentation of fashion and theatre and things that are too kind of like glamorous, because I feel like I don't like being too wasteful, and I don't like creating this sense of disparity and emphasising the glamour at the expense of the inclusiveness. And I think institutions like the Opera House really struggle with this, where the whole history of the Opera House even existing, like have you guys ever been to the Opera House to see an opera or ballet? They do try to get people in, and they've relaxed the dress code and said, okay, it's just smart casual, you just have to like, you don't have to like dress up. Which is kind of like, it's nice to dress up. But,
it is,
but it's that thing of like how to make these traditional things,
like break down those barriers.
Break down the barrier that makes you think it's not for you.
Yeah, particularly when you can get tickets starting from £5.
Exactly, but people don't necessarily know that those are there.
No, and that you can just come from work or from your day, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Or feel that they can't do that, when actually you can go in your trainers, no one cares, there is no one going to stand there at the door saying you can't come in.
Dress code, you can't come in.
Saddle as well is another great space.
Institution.
Yeah, where you can just
rock up, be
just
yourself.
rock up, which I think is fantastic. Yeah, but there are many a barrier. Yeah, absolutely. That need to be brought down.
But maybe I was feeling like that same thing with classes and being a dancer. Like, who's allowed to be a dancer? Do you have to have the right kit? Do you have to have the right look before you can even come in the door? There is a certain thing with etiquette that you should know the rules of, like how to be polite, how to show respect to the other people in the room, being self-aware, which sometimes you don't have if you haven't been taught it. And people can get very catty and kind of like say stuff if you're not being self-aware. So there's certain like kind of give and take, like you need to have both. You need to have like the accessibility, but also the sense of reverence that you are like, it's important to show respect, it's important to be disciplined. And maybe like there'll be people that will think about me that I'm the one who's like not showing respect and not being disciplined because I'm the one like doing my own thing in the corner. So it's kind of this weird like floating boundary where between classical and contemporary, and between the ideas of like being kind of polite and obedient to the authority of the teacher, and then being able to offer ideas and being collaborative and being relaxed and having a good time. So one of the things that really helped me was when I started going to the same classes with the same teacher regularly, which you might experience as well, that once you get a rapport with someone and they remember you and you remember them and they know how you work, and you've shown that you're dedicated and you're committed to going to their class and learning from them, they'll start to invest more in you. So there's this thing of like long-term relationships where you kind of like, you both invest more in the relationship over time, and because they got more comfortable with you, then they start to like really get to know you. And some of my teachers, when I first started in London in 2005, those people are now my friends, and now we'll go to the pub and we'll talk about things, and we can talk about a much bigger range of things. But then when I'm in the studio with them, they have this different way of interacting with me, and I think that's also really interesting in terms of community and mentoring and passing knowledge through the generations of teachers and different participants and people from different backgrounds. Is like getting to like know those different people with different relationships, and really investing like long term in that teaching relationship, and having mentors who you then go to for advice and they can really help you. Anyone have any questions?
I recently went to a talk, a ballet fashion talk.
Yeah.
Oh, I went there the other night as
Was you
well.
there?
I
It
was,
fantastic.
yeah. It was fantastic,
I was
yeah.
really blown away. I don't know, I didn't walk in with any expectations.
Okay.
I was just completely blown away by just the wealth of knowledge that everyone kind of had.
Yeah. So just for a bit of context, what we're talking about is at the Royal Opera House this week, they had a ballet insights night of ballet and fashion,
Yeah.
and it was very, very, full of ostentatiousness, and so but it was really interesting because they had a panel of one of the archivists, or one of the dance costume historians from the V&A, Jasper Conran, who's been designing ballet costumes for like 20, 30 years. Olivia Pomp, who has just done the Medusa costumes, and they had, it was compared by this young fabulous, well not that young, but a young fabulous woman from International Vogue, and it was all, but it was quite an intellectualized conversation actually about the structure of costumes and the process and the collaboration. Yeah.
I think the process, because I just thought, you
Like
have
getting
very,
it designed.
that's an outsider view of what actually kind of happens, but the creativity, that I was kind of shocked that everything happens pretty much in-house.
Yeah.
That there's lots of external people that kind of come to Royal Opera House to get things made.
Yeah.
And so that completely blew me away.
Yeah,
So you
'cause they
think
have a
about,
team of
how
experts.
things can get embroidered, and they might think it's kind of financially viable to do it elsewhere.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's still being made here in Britain and
That's true.
that was like, for me, I was just like being blown away.
Oh,
And just
so many
trying-
issues there.
So yeah, it was just really inspiring, and just walked away with just so much like knowledge in terms of this is hard work. It's not just
For
very
real.
simple to just sit there
And then when you
watch.
think about the type of, if you buy a garment that's like a high-end fashion garment,
This
and-
couture creation.
for sure,
Yeah.
that's the sort of skills that those people are keeping alive.
Yeah.
And that's like, they are, local creatives working in
The
Britain.
artisans. They're just as important as the dancers on the stage.
Yeah.
So it was quite an extraordinary conversation, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I have to
One
say.
of the things that we did in 2015 was an ethical fashion show collaboration, and I'd quite like to do another one of those where I had like local designers, British designers, or people who were working here, who were making clothes that was either like, it had to have some ethical element, either it was like recycled or upcycled fabrics, or it was a local designer, or they were using kind of like organic materials or locally manufactured fabrics. And then, I used like dancers that were combining like contemporary and ballet, and we sort of like used the costumes as the inspiration. So instead of going from the movement and then having costumes made for the movement, it went the other way. We got some costumes and had some quite really big variety of things. We had one girl who was from, there's a fine art college in Wimbledon, is that right? Anyway, or maybe Central
Roehampton, maybe?
No, anyway, I'll find them later. But sometimes people who make costumes, who don't necessarily make dance costumes, but they make fashion, the way they construct garments isn't necessarily the way that dancers wear them. So one of the skills that's really important for dance costumers is to know where in the body, so for example like the spine and the hips for ballet, for flexibility, you have to have all that mobility, and it needs to be able to stretch. So even if it's quite fitted and structured design, it does still need to have that flexibility of movement and to only sit in places where you can still allow the full pelvis to fully rotate and the spine to fully flex and bend. So there is a lot of skill in making dance costumes that's slightly different to making like fashion or like wearable art, like performance art. There's often a lot of people who go into making fashion art where it's very conceptual and the body kind of like disappears inside the garment.
Well, it's interesting you talk about disappearing. One of the points that was made, which I thought was really fascinating, was about the impact of lighting on costumes.
Oh my God, lighting is amazing.
I'd love to hear what your sort of, your productions, the lighting that you use. How does that impact what you do?
I have a lighting designer, Anthony Hately, and he did my piece Zone, and he's done a couple of other things with me. I've had to do I've also done a bit of lighting training, and I think one of the main things that makes dance in a theatre special is the control of the lighting. And that it's really interesting as well when you work with photographers, because you can create some of the same effects in a photography studio that you're looking to create on stage. Whereas if you're in just an ordinary dance studio or outdoors or in another space, very often the lighting just isn't stark or like interesting enough, and I think it almost creates the work. There's one of my teachers is Raymond Chai, and he did a ballet piece where he had a dancer and he had a lighting designer, and the lighting was like a character in the piece, and the dancer was dancing with the lights. But it's
was this put on at the place?
He did it. I can't remember. Maybe he did the first version of it at another platform, which is run by Chantal Rivera.
I wonder if I'm thinking about the same piece.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But it's that was Cloud Dance Festival a few years ago. But it's almost like with film, where you can choose what you show and what you don't show. So like you can focus the eye just on that and make everything else black, or you can make it expand, or you can change the mood, you know. I went to my lighting designer and said, okay, I want it to look like the sun coming up, or it's moody, or it's nighttime and you're walking through a forest, or it's spooky, or it's creepy, you know, and they'll create that mood with the colour and the direction of the lights and different, it's like really fascinating. So that almost is another whole level of expertise where you can make something very simple look really incredible, and that it's kind of like when you see those makeover things where you have someone come in like looking a mess and they put all the makeup on and take a photo and you're like, whoa, is that even the same person? Like, you can take a really ordinary piece of choreography, put it in a stage, put amazing lighting on it, and suddenly the smallest little thing stands out so much, and it becomes so much more meaningful because of the way you've shown it, it's kind of the art of making something ordinary into something extraordinary.
And how does it feel seeing your work come to life like that after watching a performance?
Yeah, it's a bit of a thrill.
Does it feel quite incredible to see it as its own sort of a living being?
So, this is hard. I usually, if I'm choreographing, usually if it's my company, if it's a HackBallet piece, I'm in the piece. Like I usually choreograph with myself in it.
Okay.
If it's a commission and I'm working on another company, then that's when I get to sit back and watch. Yeah, it's hard because I'm a tinkerer. Like I'll be looking and going, oh, that should be like that, or that should be like that. Oh, I should have made that longer. I should have cut that bit. Or I'll be thinking critically, but it is like some things you just like stop thinking and go, whoa. And you're just like so thrilled at how beautiful something looks. Those are the moments when you're just like, yeah, like you've actually like expanded the knowledge of humanity by making that thing. You're just like created something really exciting because you just had an idea and then look what happened. Like you got all these people to do something in front of you and it just made magic. And that, I guess that's the thrill that we all want, like to kind of like imagine how the world could be and then make it happen, like make something different, create something. And then you feel like you've really like had an influence on the world. And that's kind of the magic about dancing, is that you have this influence on your body, but also on the communication back and forth between yourself and the external world. Like you feel like you're wrapping the laws of physics around and just like making a little like explosion and magic happens in front of you.
So how does it feel to actually be on stage and to be dancing and to be performing your work?
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
And maybe that's another thing as well, that people, when you watch a ballet, you might think it always looks amazing, so therefore the people must always be having an amazing time. But it's kind of just like any other job. Some days you turn up and it feels great and everything works out fine. And some days you turn out and nothing's working for you and it's really frustrating. And the audience can't always tell which one's which. But I guess that's been one of the challenges I've had this year with my injury, where normally I love dancing And when you're really, like, you'll know once you start mastering something, when you really get something and you like know how to do it and you've got it and you've mastered it and you've done it so many times, you can just do it in your sleep and it's so easy. When you're on that sort of a roll and you're in a flow state and you're buzzing and you're like, yeah, and you just get it and you feel awesome. And sometimes you get that in classes when you're training, at the end of class, you've got your Grundelegro, you've got your best routine, and you just like power through it and jump in the air and like do everything to the maximum, and it's a thrill. And then sometimes, like this year, it's been a struggle, and I've really had to like fight where I've got an injury, stuff that used to be easy or that I worked really, really, really hard to get to I could be competent. I can't do it at all, and I'm just like, what's going on? I'm so frustrated. I'm like trying to do this thing with my muscle and the muscle's just not working. I'm like, disaster. And part of my process has just been to like try to get through that experience and logically know that even if I'm in pain and even if I feel like, I can't do that and it's normally easy, I know there's a bigger picture out there, and I know that I'm still having a good experience and it's still productive and worthwhile, even if it's not perfect. But it's just been like that's been like my head's been fighting at war with myself, because it feels awful to try and like do stuff when you're in pain. It's just like, what are you doing? But sometimes you just have to go through it.
And how do you manage that pain? I think, dancers are notoriously living with pain. It's an everyday occurrence, some days it's not easy obviously to be a dancer. You train all day and
you're tired.
You're tired, you've got to create and fatigue. How do you manage your own, particularly your experience that you're going through, not just physically but emotionally as well, not just as a dancer but as a creator? It's like you say, it's been a really hard year, but they're maintaining your body and trying to rehabilitate your body. That's got to have been.
I think there are things that I used to do that worked, and they don't always all work all the time. But that is one of the things why you see people often like they'll put their headphones on, and they'll go in a quiet corner, and they'll just go through their own warm-up routine, and they'll get in the zone. Like that stuff is really important, just to be able to like take time for yourself, focus internally, feel out what your body's doing, and just get rid of distractions from other people. And I guess also one thing that's been tough is like trying to not take on other people's stuff. And when I know that I have this injury and I'm weak and there's certain things that are dangerous for me to do, very often that communicates to other people in a way where they're like, oh, be careful, don't do that, don't do too much, and they try and wrap me in cotton wool. And one of the things I've really had to be very mentally strong about is to know my own limits and be like, no, this is okay for me, but also when someone does push me, to then say, no, that's too much. And that's been tough because I've had to do that a lot, like both ways, when people try to overprotect me too much or when they try to push me too hard, or get carried away. So there was a few moments in our shows in Edinburgh which were really dicey, where the dancer that I was dancing with got excited in the moment of performance, because that's what happens. You get the adrenaline, you get into the mood, you get into the character, and you take it to another level. And there was a few times when I slipped or fell, or they stumbled, or they pushed me a bit too hard, and I really lost my shit. And and that's one of the things. Then when you're working with that extra level of anxiety and thought process of I have to be careful about myself and I have to think about myself, then it's really hard to communicate with other people and to sort of be constantly telling them, giving them feedback and get that message from inside you to out to them and communicate back to them. So it's maybe then giving me awareness of just how many problems in society come up when someone is under a lot of pressure and they just can't handle anything to go wrong, and any little thing that triggers them, they will explode and lose it, and you can just see how these things escalate, and it's not just nothing to do with dancing or anything, it's to do with generally how people are in the world when they're under pressure. That you can just lose it, even if you had no intention of waking up that morning and going and having an argument with your colleagues, but that's what happened because you were under that much pressure and stress. So I guess it's sort of like given me a bigger awareness of like the way we are in ourselves and how much that influences how we are with other people. And when people lose their shit at you, you can be like, oh, I wonder what happened for them that day. I wonder what pain they're in.
It's interesting because I think a lot of, potentially a lot of dance audiences don't really get to see the sort of behind the scenes, how much effort is more nowadays with social media
There's
and
a lot
video.
more now.
Loads more
And
now.
people are fascinated by it.
Yeah.
Loads of people watch dancers' warm-up videos, and dancers like, oh, I want to see what she's doing. Like, what does she? What music does she listen to? What foam roller does she use? What stretchy bands does she use? What diet is she on? Like, how when does she drink her water? When does she have her coffee? And when does she go to the toilet? Everyone are really like, how do you manage to do something that hard?
Like what's in your ballet bag or your dance bag, or what are you lugging around
what's
with
your
you?
recipe for success? And it doesn't always work. You've still got the same, like, okay, what was all the things that had to go into that person's history to get them to that point? You can't just like, oh, here's your recipe, tick, 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 checklist, and now I can be just like you. There's a lot that has to go into it. And maybe it's a good or bad fascination. Like, I think a lot of people get this sort of like vicarious like thrill out of watching other people push themselves to the limit, and like how hard it is, like the really top schools and training and big companies, like the competition is ruthless. And I think that there is that sense of like what people love about it is the sense of like you're pushing yourself so hard, and like we're rooting for you.
But dancers as athletes being
and like representing
lot,
at the kind of like the top level of peak performance of humanity. Like, what can a human being do if they're really pushed up?
It's quite extraordinary, in fact, what they can do.
Basically. And what we do when we watch them is our mirror neurons are firing off like, I want to do that, I want to feel like that, I want to have my leg up there, I want to do that back bend, I want to jump that high, like, and
then add a narrative on top of that, add a story,
tell a story,
and artistry and emotion,
and all
even in contemporary dance,
for sure.
telling that story physically.
There is a sense of like it's bigger than real life. So I've actually had this conversation with a friend of mine about drama. I don't know if anyone you come across in kind of social media and like the conversations you have with your friends of like, oh, she's being dramatic, you're being so dramatic, stop, what's with all the drama? And I've been thinking a lot about this kind of crossover back and forth between real life and artwork, and the narratives and the stories. So there's something that happens in neuroscience is like, in order for you to make sense of your history, you have to turn it into a story of like, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And often as humans, we're always trying to look for the cause of why did that happen, and what circumstances made me successful, and how can I keep repeating those same things so that I can be successful again. And one of the things we have to do is constantly be adapting and learning as our environment changes and as other people change around us, that we have to keep responding, and maybe we won't be able to repeat the same perfect circumstances for success each time. So you notice this with like business world, where you've got like startups who come in and like change the whole industry, where you used to have taxi drivers and now you have Ubers, and like Uber just came in and changed the whole industry, and now everyone's like, oh well, how's it going to affect the things that we are already used to? So I think that happens a lot, where you're kind of like, you thought that you knew how you got to where you are, and then something made you reconsider, and you're like, oh, maybe that wasn't exactly the way I interpreted it. So you're kind of like always like thinking, and I guess like that goes into my creativity, where I'm like, oh yeah, I thought I was making this piece, but then the circumstances change and it morphs, and now it's over here and it's something else, and I didn't know how I got there, but okay, well this is still cool, like great. And it's kind of how you adapt and react to it.
Well, you're talking about the disruptors of industry,
For sure.
and the dance industry earlier. What are your sort of views on the changing dance world, the dance industry itself, as you're experiencing it as an independent dance artist in London? Or what would you like to see changed or evolved?
I think it's really positive that that the hashtag #MeToo thing is flowing through. And you have got people, like, it's nowhere near what we need, but that the trend is towards more equality and more opportunities, and that's really good. So I want to see more of that. From my own point of view, I think the main thing I'm struggling with is, like, what's the product and how do we make money, and how do we pay people fairly, and maybe I'm thinking in terms of, like, this kind of thing, like how we use technology, that the model of you go to the theatre and you pay your ticket and that's the only way you make your money, I feel like that's limiting, and that there might be possibilities in terms of how we communicate with audiences through technology. It's a bit utopian though. I think a lot of people kind of have this hope that, like, oh, we're going to all, like, have our YouTube feeds and we're going to have advertising on it, and that's how we're going to make money, and, like, the people that are making money out of that are, like, 10 people in the world, and everybody else is like, okay, well, I'm just putting my stuff out there and nobody's watching, so I don't know. It's a little bit hard to kind of grasp where we are and to know, like, okay, well, what's my future, like, what does my career look like, and maybe personally I'd like to have, like, more of a kind of stability and a home and, like, plans for the future that I can, like, you know, definitely tell people, like, I am here and I'm going there. I'd like to see it be easier to connect with people and to get people's attention for the kind of things that, like, I think are important, like positive body image and empowering women, and authentically using your creativity to make the things that you want to see instead of waiting for somebody else to do it for you. So I guess that's the kind of, like, my direction of my work, is that's what I'm going towards.
There's quite a lot of issues in there. For
real.
Body positivity,
like, who
women's
are you?
voices, funding for independent artists, new voices within the dance world. It's quite a lot, isn't it? Use of technology, the ever-changing world that it is, and it'd be great to have more audiences seeing a different range of dance, and that whole tapestry of dance being,
like, that's my utopian vision, is, like, everyone dances and everyone enjoys dancing. And, like, everyone can.
Well, everyone does. I think genuinely, it is.
Some people are so shy.
There's an inherent, human nature to move.
Maybe, but everyone. I'd like people to stop feeling so judged, and just go out there and have a good time and enjoy dancing and enjoy their body. That's, like, my headline message. Like, can everyone just go and dance in the streets? Like, we should have that every day. We should be like Cuba and have, like, a tango, like, on every street corner. Maybe not when it's raining. We'll have to have, like, singing in the rain. But, like, can people just have fun and run around and play? I think that's, like, the main thing I love, is just, like, being able to play and be excited and not worry about people telling you should do that. Like, go in the park and run and jump and climb a tree and have a good time.
But then you've got to come back and fill in the funding applications and do all the bureaucracy and the red tape, and hope you get some sort of money within this very limited pot that's ever reducing.
I tend to switch off from that stuff, and I just go, well, I'm just going to make something. And, like, I can't be bothered with all that. Maybe someone can help me to fill out my forms and, like, hit my deadlines. And does anyone want to be my assistant? Like, I need an intern. But,
Well, any other questions? Anything you'd like to ask Briar about her life as a dancer, choreographer, artistic director?
What made you guys curious to come today?
What were you hoping to hear or learn?
I think, because I'm constantly looking at movement, I wanted to find out how you feel about movement as a choreographer. So that's kind of important, because to be an observer and to watch and to think how does someone create something so amazing on stage, and then to hear your views of how you actually do this.
How does it change your art to hear what I think about what I'm doing? What does it change for you? Does it influence what you draw, or why, or what shoot you choose? The poses you choose, or?
Because I'm actually documenting the movement
Yeah.
with a choreographer. So I'm actually creating something different from what
Yeah,
possibly
from that
someone
stimulus.
else is creating. So
Yeah.
it's my interpretation of what you're interpreting. And also I wanted to ask, do you do loads of drawings yourself when you're choreographing?
I have done. Now, I mean, sometimes I'll do a little stick figure, like, oh, this person's here, and then they go over here, or I'll do plots of the space. So like this group comes in from here, and then this group comes in from here, and then they dance together. Like I used to do that more as a younger choreographer. Maybe I don't need to anymore. But I haven't tried to do something with a really big group recently, so we'll have to see. But yeah, sometimes I do draw little cartoons. And I also have worked with photographers, and there's another artist who takes photos and then writes poetry about them. And then the way he structures his poems is on the page. It's like an artwork on the page with where the words are. So you can have it's like that kind of calligraphy art where the words actually also tell a picture, like, so you can, there's like the emotion and the thought process and also the visual. And like sometimes when I'm creating, like I almost see that the body's a bit like a painting, like they're like stick figures that I get to move. And like, do you guys have the little doll Gumby, like this little stick figure doll where you can like bend the legs?
Even I'm being Australian, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's like
it sounds really Aussie.
A mannequin when you're,
Gumby.
a doll
Yeah.
that was bendy, and you could bend the legs and put them, and you can, it's really cool to like manipulate people and then make something beautiful and then video it and then put it somewhere, and they're like, oh wow, I didn't know I could do that. Like,
But the illustrations for dance costuming is very
those
important.
are beautiful.
They're so very beautiful. And again, listening to the insights at the Royal Opera House the other night and seeing projected onto the wall these beautiful illustrations and these little shadings of colour without even having any real structure around what that garment was going to look like. It was just about a sense and a feeling.
because there's that symbolism, isn't there, different colours.
Yeah, I think...
Sometimes if you've got a group of dancers, you have like 6 couples, and each couple has their, like that one's the pink couple and the purple couple and the yellow couple, and so they might all have the same costume, but the symbolism of the colour tells you, oh, that guy and that girl are going to dance together, and oh, now they're dancing with different people, and it kind of, you can make the pattern out of like, actually of the colour of the costume, things like that.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much for coming, guys. It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure.
Thank
Welcome
you
to the
everyone
beautiful
online.
space at the Opera House, at the Wayne McGregor.
Thank you.
Follow us on at HackBallet on Instagram. If you'd like to hear more about our classes, there's a mailing list. I've sent you all an email, so I'll send you out a link so you can sign up to our mailing list for the next course or performance or event. And we'll probably do another one next year. We'll see how it goes.
And to everyone at the wonderful world of dance, thank you for tuning in, and get ready for the next edition of the magazine, which is coming out in summer. And it's got some beautiful talking about dance photography. We've got beautiful photography on the cover, which I'm very excited to reveal soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.